Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Tuckfield. The time is 6:30. The day is Thursday, July the 7th. I'm going to call this regularly scheduled Macomb Township Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. That is the first item on the agenda. The second item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand with me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. That takes us on to item 3, which is the roll call. Ms. Lawson, could you call roll?
Yes, sir. Starting with Member DeBruin,
Present.
Member DeCoster,
Here.
Member Piper,
Here.
Chairman Tuckfield,
Here.
and Member Slauson. All members are present.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Lawson. This moves us on to item 4, which is to address any conflicts of interest. At this time, we're going to call the roll call. If any members have any conflicts with any of the items on tonight's agenda, please signify by saying yes. And if you have no conflicts, please signify by saying no. Ms. Lawson, please call roll.
Myself, no. Chairman Tuckfield,
No.
Member Piper,
No.
Member DeCoster,
No.
Member DeBruin,
No. Very good. Having stated no conflicts of interest, we're going to move on to item 5, approval of the agenda. I will note that we do have some correspondence on a couple of our agenda items. I think we're going to move on the agenda as presented, and we'll deal with the correspondence in line, I think, as we'll discuss doing earlier. So with that being said, I will entertain any motions or comments on tonight's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
support.
Very good. Motion by Mr. Piper, supported by Ms. Lawson. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. I will mention to the audience, we're doing this procedurally, but just be aware that if you're here for items 8A or 8C, we are likely not going to be discussing this with them this evening. You're more than welcome to sit around and hear us get to the point where we're procedurally going to do that, but I just want to give you all an understanding that that's likely to happen. Moving on then to item 6, which is approval of the previous meeting minutes. Is there any discussion or motions on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 5th, 2022.
Support. Motion by Mr. DeCoster, supported by Mr. Bruin. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries, and those minutes are adopted. Item 7 is old business. I don't believe we have any old business tonight, Mr. Fox, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, that moves us on to item 8, which is new business, which brings us to item 8A, a variance request from the zoning ordinance for permit parcel 08011760029. Mr. Fox, I believe we're going to be looking at canceling this evening. Could you take us through this, please?
Sure. So this applicant had requested a variance in order to facilitate a lot split. They applied for the lot split through the normal means. They were denied, so then they submit for their variance request. In that process, after we had advertised for this item, which is why we left it on the agenda, it came to light through the assessing department that this parcel came from a larger parcel that existed in the past. That parcel in 2015 was split into numerous other parcels. And so in September of 2015, when that was split, they exhausted all their allowable splits based on the State Land Division Act. So they're not eligible to resplit that lot until September of 2025. So therefore, we're asking for this item to be dismissed.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Fox. Mr. O'Leary, just a quick question. I assume if we vote to dismiss this, there would be no public hearing. We would not ask for comments. Is that accurate?
Sure. I mean, you could have also removed from the agenda at the beginning.
Yep. Okay, very good. That being said, I will entertain a motion to dismiss the item, the correct terminology, not postpone or table.
Yeah, you dismiss it because they're not eligible and the application is at this point non-void.
Okay, correct. Very good. I'll entertain a motion to dismiss item 8A from the agenda.
I'll make that motion to dismiss the agenda 8A.
Motion by
Support.
Mr. DeBruin, supported by Ms. Lawson. Let's do a roll call on this one, Ms. Lawson.
Okay. Member DeBruin,
Yes.
Member Slauson, yes. Member DeCoster,
Yes.
Member Piper.
Yes.
And Chairman Tuckfield.
Yes. Very good. Item 8A has been dismissed.
I have a question. Considering the dismissal.
We generally don't do comments now. We do them at the end.
Later, we're on 8A.
we dismissed the item, and I'll entertain one question, but if you do so, sir, you have to come to the podium and state your name and address, and we have to keep this to minimal time because we have.
Absolutely. I'm not even arguing it.
Understood.
Mike Mullins. Mike Mullins, 56631 Fairchild Road.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking the question is I was told it was like a 10-year, they had 10 years, they could come back. What happens at that point?
According to what Mr. Box told us, they are eligible to request another lot split. It would still be against the variance or against the ordinance rather. So if the ordinance stays the same and they request the same split, they would have to come back in for another variance request.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Thank you. It is a regular, but I suppose I already opened it to one person. Does anybody else have any brief singular questions? Seeing none, I'm going to move on. All right.
Thank you.
No problem. 8B, and again, if anyone's here for 8C, we're likely going to be doing a similar thing with canceling. So just be aware of that before we go on this item. Item 8B is a variance request from the zoning ordinance, section of 10.0356A1 for permanent parcel 08054511197. This is a request to allow an open air structure to be partially enclosed. Mr. Box, could you take us through your views on it?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman and Board. So this property is located just north of 25 Mile Road, east of Romeo Plains in the Wolverine subdivision. And what they're seeking is a variance to partially enclose a covered patio. This is not a variance we see all that often. I think we've seen one in the past couple of years. And to be honest, the ordinance that's in place, I had to ask a little bit about the origins of that because it's not one that, again, that we see very often. My understanding is the reason that was put in place to begin with is the principal structure has setback requirements from property lines, front, rear, and side yards. And a number of people would then add a patio and then add a cover to the patio. And then before you know it, the patio is enclosed. Well, that's kind of part of the principal structure at that point because the roof is attached to the principal structure and therefore it would technically violate the setbacks. So to avoid that, this ordinance came about at that time. There was a little confusion. I think that the open air partially enclosed statements in particular are kind of vague. They're not defined in the ordinance, but nonetheless, it is an open air structure and a half wall is being proposed in this instance. So as you see on the screen behind you, this is one that was already starting to be constructed. They have the open air. It is attached to the principal structure, and they've built a half wall on the rear facing portion of that. In speaking with the building department, they were not aware of that half wall early on in the process until it was constructed. And they are the ones that noticed this and indicated that it needed a variance to continue. So that's what they're here for this evening. As our internal departments looked at it, assessing had no issue, engineering, water and sewer or public works had no exception or no objection, excuse me. They do suggest that maybe the structure in general shouldn't be over the sump line. However, that's not, that's their right to build it over the sump line. It's not something that's against the ordinance per se, just not recommended by them because if their sump line does fail, they've now got to tear up the entire structure in order to get to it. That being said, overall, they don't oppose it. And planning is kind of the same way. We didn't really have any objection to what they're doing here, other than the fact that we're going to leave it up to them to indicate what their hardship really is here, of why they need the variance, why they couldn't develop the structure without the half wall.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Box. Any questions for Mr. Box from the board?
I have one quick question. You mentioned about the setbacks. Will the structure impose on the setbacks then?
Well, if it's not enclosed, it wouldn't be considered part of the principal structure. It's the enclosing part that makes it that. So that's why they would need this
So
variance.
by building that half wall, though, is that affecting the setback rules?
No, because it's not fully enclosed at this point.
With regards to enclosure, it's only the half wall, the roof isn't an issue.
Correct.
So it's just that.
And the term enclosure is not clearly defined in the ordinance, is what the
That's correct.
foundation is.
And for your awareness, we are in the process of rewriting the entire zoning ordinance right now. And this is definitely one of those things that we are looking at to make this a little bit more clear. Again, in speaking with the building department, another item that came about is why this ordinance came about was, you know, you're limited to the number of accessory structures. So sheds, for example, they started to run into issues where people would put a pergola and then start slowly enclosing it and trying to claim, well, it's not a shed, it only has 3 walls. So that's where this partially enclosed came from.
I know it's not approved yet with the new master plan or the zoning ordinance. Would this be, do you know, would this be approved in the next?
I don't think we have an answer to that. I think more than anything, we're going to try to define what partially enclosed means and what open air means.
Mr. Box, just a question on this. Obviously, we have a variance request in front of us. And I know from past experience that we cannot rule on a variance request that was not made to us. However, one of the other abilities of the ZBA is definition, being asked for a definition and giving a ruling. Is that something, and this might be more applicable to Mr. Wyatt, is that something that we can do without having a request made of us? Or does it require a request for us to look at a definition?
I don't think a request to interpret the statute and create, and in terms of create a definition is before you right now. I think that would be contrary to what the request is. The request is a variance. If you believe that within the variance language that in what they're doing, there's some sort of hardship there, I think that's what your role would be.
Very good. Understood.
Understood?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Any other questions from Mr. Box? Hearing none, is the petitioner in the audience? If so, if you would come forward to the center table here and state your name and address for the record.
Name is Anthony Pearl.
Just one moment here. Mr. Box, I'm not familiar with that new microphone setup. Do we have to have him speak into a particular place?
And he's close enough to the microphone. I think it's going to pick it up.
Okay, very good. Sorry, we have no audio visual. I'm not entirely sure when it's going to pick you up.
Sure, I no problem.
Go ahead. Sorry, sir.
Oh, that's right. That is my house. As you know, the last couple of years are crazy. In fact, I built the structure before I had a permit because I had people lined up to do it. And if I didn't do it when I did, I'd be waiting 3 or 4 years to do that project. I've been talking to the guys at the city all along. We're on very good terms. In fact, they've come out, they've looked at it, and they said the only thing that's keeping it from being approved is actually having the permit. But because of the small wall we built, there was an issue. That small wall on that patio is the focal point and emphasis of the entire project, because there's going to be a decorative gas flame from column to column within it. And then a very small item on it would be, we didn't want people walking off that end of the patio. It's technically a third of a wall, not a half wall. There's twice as much space above it as there is below it. And then we have a neighbor 2 houses down that just built a patio almost like ours, pretty close. And they have an 8-foot wide floor to ceiling rock stone wall. So we requested the variance. I thought that was my process for turning in the paperwork and the pictures and stuff. So it's news to me that you guys are not having a request for it.
I will just to make sure we're clear, we do have the request for a variance in front of us. I was asking a technical question about other procedural ways this could be processed, essentially.
My mistake.
Any questions for the petitioner?
I have one.
Councilman Costa.
So where you see the block now, where the wall goes up about a third of the way, what is going to be there? I'm assuming you're going to pour concrete or stamped concrete.
That is correct. There'll be a concrete slab on the raised area. There'll also be one on this side of the wall at ground level with stairs up to it, and then there's stairs up from the other side as well.
Is there any railing or anything around it, or is that just all
To code, we're not above what we would need a railing for.
Any questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, and with no objection, I'm going to open up to the public. If there's anyone from the public who would like to speak on this request, please come forward to the podium over here. State your name and address for the record and give any comments you might have. See no one from the public who wishes to speak. I'll give another second here, just make sure no one wants to come up. And without any objection, I'm going to close the public portion and bring this back to the board. Any further questions or comments?
I guess the only thing I had is Mr. Box. At this point, not taking your word for it, or taking your word for it, but just confirm, is this all approved by the building department, subject to this variance approval?
That's my understanding, yes.
Mr. Box, and you might know this question. I pulled up the ordinance section here, and it refers to covered patios, gazebos, pergolas, pavilions, and other similar, quote, open air type structures shall be approved, et cetera, et cetera. The open air structure shall not be enclosed or partially enclosed within walls. What is the standard that we've used for partially enclosed? Obviously, as you mentioned, it is subjective.
Well, again, this is not one we see very often. I think it's only been applied for once in the past 2.5 years since I've been here. And that was for an entire one wall of enclosure. So I honestly don't know what I would say. It is, we're treating it as a standard as far as what's enclosed and what's not. It's just too sporadic of a request to say that we have a standard.
Go ahead.
So, my question is, and this may be for Joe as well. Our decision here is, may set a precedent as to what partial is defined as, up until the new ordinance is struck. Am I correct in assuming that?
It may, but I think every patio seems to be unique in the way they do it. I think this is, the uniqueness in this one maybe is that it's only a third enclosed, it's not half enclosed, it's not 2/3 enclosed. The question is if it's really even enclosed.
That was the next part of my question.
That's really what the issue is, because what he's saying is he's putting a fireplace there, and it's really the installation, it's like a gas line fire, like with the rocks in it.
Correct.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So really what he's doing is he's adding a like a fire line element to it. And he's doing it post to post. The question is really that's considered partial enclosed or not.
The other part of my question was if we as individual members, if any one of us feel that that is not in the spirit of the definition of partially enclosed, do we still make a motion? Will we make a motion to approve it? Or would there be no variance request if we determined that that wasn't the spirit of partially enclosed?
Well, I guess that this could have been done at the application phase, maybe better to hold at that point, but so really there's two functions you have. One is there's an application for a variance, and when considering that, it's whether or not there's a hardship. Through the course of that, if you determine that the hardship is such that reasonable minds would believe that this would not be a partial enclosure, given the unique elements of this structure, I think that would be sufficient. Then what happens is that the definition remains open to determination on a case-by-case basis, given the language.
Which is in fact what is happening. or what would seem to be happening.
I think that's, if you find a hardship, I think that would be the only problem.
Yeah, and just to this context, make sure that I'm citing whatever we cited in the agenda, which we cited A1. A1 says the open air structures shall not be enclosed or partially enclosed with walls. Specifically, the sentence, I guess this is where my question was at the beginning, because I don't know that I would reasonably assume that this was a wall. I mean, I could make the case that if you put in a guardrail, it would be the same, potentially make it the same height, had it be a reasonable thing. Obviously, we know from what Mr. Bach said, I know from past experience, that the spirit and intent was to discourage people from project creep turning into a house. I suppose you could apply that to this, but I don't know. When I read it, I don't know that I would view this as partially enclosed. So I think your point there about reasonably being able to read that into the ordinance would be a lot of. So, right, very good. Any other comments or motions? And also, Mr. Box, I should make sure we give you a chance to chime in on this if you want to.
No, I would agree with that, I think you can make that determination of whether there's a hardship, or if that hardship is the fact that, it's a undefined element in the ordinance.
Which it is, so. All right, any comments or motions?
I would make a motion to approve this variance based on the loose language that is included here. We have before us.
Very good, I would support that, support that motion. That being said, is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any clarification that you?
Yeah, is the motion that the approval of the variance is based on the fact that reasonable minds would determine that this is not partially closed, but that, and that the homeowner relied on his belief that it was not.
In much better terms, that would be exactly what it was. I make the motion to approve this variance based on the fact that would not be considered a wall under reasonable minds.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Lloyd. With that being said, no further discussion, Ms. Lawson, please call the roll.
Member DeBruin,
Yes.
Member Tuckfield,
Yes.
Member DeCosta,
Yes.
Member Piper,
Yes.
and Ms. Lawson says yes.
Very good, that'll be 5-0. That variance is approved. Thank you for coming in, sir.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
You as well. All right, that moves us on to item 8C, which is a variance request from the zoning ordinance section 0818454001. We have some correspondence on this from the petitioner's representative asking us to postpone this. Mr. Box, do we have a date certain on when they were looking at this postponed to, or maybe just the next meeting?
I would say just to the next meeting,
And that would be
August 4th.
August 4th, yes. Yes. All right, with that being said, I will entertain a motion to, per the correspondence from the petitioner, postpone this item to August 4th.
I will make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Ms. Lawson, is there support?
I'll support that.
Supported by Mr. Piper. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries, and that item is postponed to the 4th. That moves us on to item 9, which is public comments. This will be for members of the audience for non-agenda items. And if you have anything you'd like to speak on, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and give any comments you might have. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board for the next item, which is ZBA member comments. Any comments from the board?
Sorry, it's almost tardy today.
All I can say is I don't know that we're going to try to put tardy in our minutes. I was tardy in our minutes a couple of meetings ago, so.
I said almost.
Yes, there you go. I did have a question for Mr. Box, something that I had a couple people contact me about, and I was not sure the answer, so I figured I'd just ask it, and we can see if there is an answer or if there is no answer. There's a note on the agenda that says township meetings are available on the website only until further notice. I know we have had some changes at the department head level. Is there currently in expected rhythm for videos and meetings, and we've had stuff live in the past. Is there something that's expected at the moment, or are we still kind of in flux there?
I think we're a little bit in flux, so as you heard before the meeting, the recording is started. So as of now, until we determine what's gonna happen with the media department, we are recording these via Zoom. And as soon as possible, we'll get that uploaded to the township website.
Okay, so it's no longer live, but it is being recorded with audio and video,
For now, that's correct.
and it will be put on. And at the moment, we don't know what next steps are other than correct, just to determine. Okay, very good. The other thing that I would mention is that at the planning commission on Tuesday, Mr. Box and his department brought forth a amendment to the zoning ordinance to increase the width to depth ratio from 1:3 to 1:4, which, as we know, we certainly hear a lot of those. So I think it got a pretty good reception at the planning commission. Based on that, I would think that it probably will proceed through. It's got a few steps left, but usually at the point that it gets that far and everybody's in favor of it, I would think that it will proceed through. It should lessen the number of required variances that come before us, which is good for us, and I think good for the township as a whole. So I think that was positive. That's all I have. Anybody else before I move on to the next item? No comments? All right, we'll go on to planning director comments. Mr. Box, anything for us this evening?
Nothing this evening.
All right, and we're not on the agenda, but I'll ask Mr. Roy, anything for you this evening?
Nothing.
All right, very good. With that, that'll move us on to item 12, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Ms. Lawson, is there support? Supported by Mr. Piper. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying nay. At 6:57, we stand adjourned.
Yeah.